Hello. Just making sure that people in the audience were also potentially wearing color on stage today. We just realized. Stand out. This is a real joy for me to talk to Ibtihaj, to talk to Asia, at a moment that's, I'll be honest, it's mind-blowing what women's sports is going through right now. And I mean this in the sense of, okay, let's acknowledge sports as a meritocracy, like the closest thing America likes to think of a meritocracy, and also simultaneously a TV show. And I want to be honest about this because what's happening in women's sports right now is a story about entertainment and viewership. And so I want to start with just the acknowledgement of, okay, we have two just unrepentant overachievers on stage here. So we have Olympic medalists, we have, people who may or may not be some of the greatest athletes to ever play their sports. That is not an exaggeration. But when it comes to the tension between, okay, entertainment and meritocracy, the game and the show, I want to talk to Asia first about this because Asia is the greatest player in the WNBA right now.
Thank you.
Two-time defending champion, two-time MVP, reigning finals MVP, you get the idea. But Asia has also been watching the Caitlin Clark phenomenon set records in a way that, look, I'm talking a lot, I'll just say 18 million people watched.
Right.
A record, more people watched that game, Women's Final Four, than any NBA game on ESPN, ever.
Yeah.
And so what's it been like? Same. We're among the 18 million plus. But I'm curious what it's like for Asia to be watching this as who she is.
Yeah, I feel like it's becoming amazing, actually, because now I feel like because I play it and I've been in it, and now I'm seeing everyone else watching, I'm like, oh yeah, it's about time you guys join. Like, your bandwagons anywhere else, like now? Like, great, like finally. But at the same time, I think about it as like, I hope that this isn't just a trend. I feel like we see it a lot in young athletes. Like, it's like, oh my God, yes, we love her, we wanna do this. And then the minute it kind of shifts or her path is a little rocky, all that goes away. And I feel like that's when it's needed most. That's when that investment, that support is needed most. So I pray that it's not a trend, it is a movement that is heading into the right direction. But then again, I can't help but to say that my Gamecocks were 38-0. Yeah. Come on.
Happened to be the winners of that game that everybody watched.
Yeah. Yes, the execution of it. And when I look at the college game, I'm like, oh my God, they're doing far more better than what I did in college. And I'm so happy for that. So the growth of the game is in good hands. I'm so glad to be a part of it. But it's just truly amazing to see what these young people have really turned the game into. So I know I kind of look at it as like an old vet, and they're like, oh my God, you're kind of old. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's only been 7 years. Let's relax. I'm just there with you. But the game is in great hands, and it's growing, and it's flourishing, and that's what it's truly all about. So I hope that anyone that's invested in paying attention to it, continue to invest in it, buy that jersey, go to that game, take someone else, put your money where your mouth is, and invest in these women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Ibtihaj, you're a fencer. Olympic medalist fencer, and the story of women's sports right now is that it's not just basketball. There is this truly conspicuous rising tide, and I'm wondering how you are watching all of this unfold through your lens.
I also watched, not just the final, but I watched a lot of the games. And for me, my viewership of women's basketball was when I was a kid. My mom and my dad used to take us to go see the Liberty at Madison Square Garden. I'm from New Jersey, we used to take the train, and so I have like a signed Rebecca Lobo jersey. So I feel like I've been invested from the time I was young, but it's been a lot of fun to kind of watch this trajectory of women's sports and to see people, want to invest, want to get their kids out there and playing. And what I think I would love to see is more sponsorships when it comes from, these big companies. There's less than 10% of those dollars goes to women. And I would love to see these big companies, these big, sponsorships invest in women and invest in the game so that more of our girls see themselves long-term involved in sport.
Yeah, one of the things that's happening is that that thought has gone from a notion of, oh, this is a good thing that you should do, to a thing that people are incentivized by the market to do. Yeah. And I want to talk about that because what would it have been like for you guys to be in college in this era?
Oh my gosh.
So different.
What?
First of all, not broke. I
Okay.
mean,
This would be a chinchilla instead of, nothing wrong with it, but it would be a little cashmere.
But name, image, and likeness, right?
Huge.
So the economy, so it's interesting. In women's basketball, and women's sports in general, you're seeing people who are making far in excess of some male athletes.
Yeah.
And this is just standard market rates now.
Yeah.
And so when you look at what, again, South Carolina, let's take that as an example, right? If you were there right now, how different would your actual career have been? What would have been different about it?
Obviously my bank account would be the biggest difference, but I feel like I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I would have an agent in college. I feel like it kind of strips you from actually being that student athlete. It's kind of, because now you have to work on your brand. Like you can't make those college decisions all the time because you really have to really protect your brand, and I know it can be tough. So I feel like it's a reason why this generation and this class is having it, because I feel like if we had it, a lot of us would be in different spaces and not necessarily in a good way all the time. It could also kind of be, your career could be different because you could be satisfied in those spaces and be like, well, I'm good, I have enough, I made enough, why go to the next level? And I feel like we saw that this year. A lot of people were like, oh my God, why would you go pro when you're making this? And it's like, well, that's the whole point. Hopefully those investors, those sponsors can continue to help you grow at the next level. It doesn't just cut off because you're a professional. It's supposed to enhance it. It's supposed to increase. So I think the mindset has now shifted to where it's like, no, you can protect your brand, but be a pro and continue to do what you love. But you gotta have people behind you that are willing to be open and invest in you and want you to be you.
Yeah.
yeah. And when we look at the numbers, far fewer athletic sponsorships go to women than they do go to men. So like for myself, I fenced at Duke and I was given a partial academic scholarship. I was recruited to fence for Duke, but wasn't given an athletic scholarship. So I always think, what would my life have been like had I, had the opportunity to have NIL deals, a name, image, and likeness? And I think that life would be so different in a sense that you would be thinking about your brand at an earlier point. And I know it may have been weird to have an agent at that time, but I do think we're not teaching, that this generation, or our generation even, about protecting our brand at that really early point. And social media has changed so much.
Well, let's talk about that, right? So they're monetizing, college athletes are monetizing audiences at a time simultaneous to, I would say, a ongoing crisis around mental health and phone addiction and seeing yourself through the lens of who you project your brand to be.
Yeah.
And I just imagine we're basically running an experiment live on these kids. And there's great reward, but also I'm curious, again, we're all on our phones. Unfortunately, we were forced to put them away for this moment, but that part, right? How hard do you imagine that to be, Asia?
It's hard, and I feel like social media gives everyone a voice. It really does, and I feel like at a young age, it's really hard sometimes to understand that not everybody's gonna like you, because especially if you're doing good and you feel great, and it's gonna always be that one person that's like, don't like you, and that one person is gonna cancel out the millions of people that have your back because you're like, I wanna prove this one person wrong, and you could get stuck in that. And so like, when we're talking about protecting our brand, I feel like we also have to protect our peace, and you have to find that in your circle around you and pray that you can help to continue to build that, because your brand is going to come, it is, but one thing that you always have to take care of is your mental. And that's what I hope that these young kids that are going through this NIL, that's going to be pros from rookies, is understanding that you have to protect your peace first. Like, your brand is going to come with that, but your peace is what really matters.
I want to talk about the Olympics and the lack of peace you guys have as athletes when you're competing over there, because I want to explain to people what it's actually like to be an individual with individual incentives and a teammate with team goals, and also maybe playing a season simultaneous to this because they didn't necessarily consider the WNBA when they were scheduling.
Not at all.
The
like, the Summer
calendar.
Olympics is right in the middle of our season. Like, come on out. Find another date.
So Ibtihaj, I want to start with you just on that. Like, explain what it's like to be at the Olympics on the ground. Paris, of course, is this summer. What do people misunderstand about what it's really like to be over there?
You know, the beauty of the Olympics is you as spectators, you get to see the story of, the athlete. And these big media companies are personalizing it in a way that you get to see our family and who's helped us arrive at that point. But for a lot of us, it's a really, really stressful 2 weeks. Yes, the Olympic Games, but even leading up to it. For myself, I qualified at the height of a presidential election when then, presidential nominee had announced, or proposed a Muslim ban. And as a very visible Muslim woman, I was the first Muslim woman to win an Olympic medal for the United States. Thank you. My questions were not about sport. They weren't about fencing, which I would have loved. They weren't about, my competitions. They were a lot of, highly politicized questions. And if I could go back in time, I would change, really how Team USA prepared me for that moment, which they didn't. And I think that would have been really helpful. Like, it was very stressful mentally because you want to do well and you want to compete well for your country, but at the same time, I felt like I wanted to represent the communities I'm a part of, to the best of my ability.
Right.
Yeah, for us, it's a little different. Obviously, we have our season, which is the first half, and then it's an Olympic break, and then we continue our season after the Olympics.
Which is awkward.
Very awkward, because I go from you being my rival, absolutely can't stand you, to now it's like, girl, let's go get this gold. And then it goes back to like, I can't stand you again. So it's very hard to do that, but it also shows how elite the athletes are when you make it to that stage. And like, I always say, like, now, obviously, eyes are on women's basketball, and it's great. But before, it wasn't always like that. But one thing I could always tell people that made them be like, oh, no, she's good, is I'm an Olympian. I'm a gold medalist. And so that's when it kind of flips on with people that are like, oh, no, you're pretty decent at what you do. I'm like, no, I really am. And so it's like, it's very hard, and the pressure that we have. I mean, we're going for our 8th straight gold medal. And...
That's a lot.
Right, and my hands are literally sweating as I speak because I'm like...
Mine too. I'm like, I'm not even gonna be out there.
Oh my gosh, you mean 8? Like, I'm just happy to be here, but it's like one of those moments where you're just like, no, we're here, biggest stage, like you're playing for something that's bigger than you, so go get it. So I'm excited for this summer. It's gonna be tons of fun. I can't wait to shop and eat a little something, but also get a gold medal.
Attention being currency. I want to sort of weave this as a through line through this little talk we're having today, right? Because it's a zero-sum game, attention, in ways that we all feel, I think, personally, but when it comes to the business of it, I want to talk about the idea that, okay, we have these main characters that the market has spoken for, so to speak. Caitlin Clark is the predominant phenomenon right now. Yeah. But simultaneously, I want to speak to you, Asia, about, okay, what about the people who haven't gotten that spotlight,
right,
but also deserve, based on merit on the court,
right,
to be spoken in the same paragraph, if not the same sentence, if not ahead of certain names, like Caitlin's? How do you manage the zero-sum aspect of competition as well as cooperation again?
That's a great question. I think my biggest thing is when I always think about approaching different things, whether it's just trying to be marketable or just being me, or I feel like I shouldn't be someone that has to scream my resume. I feel like something that speaks for myself, and I carry myself highly on that. But at the same time, I always tell myself, what is delayed is not denied. And that's something that you have to continue to push. It's like, I don't ever want to lose myself or sell my soul to something because I'm like, look at me, I need to be in these spaces. And it's always one of those things where I'm like, it might be delayed, but I guarantee you I'm going to be exactly where I need to be when that moment comes. And I hope that I can shine my brightest in that. And thank you. And I think that is something that we can continue to be, because as I'm in those spaces, I hope that I can be a voice for the voiceless and be that light for those people that don't get that can't really, that light's just dimming a little bit. Continue to shine bright for them, because it is hard in this world. It really is, particularly in our sport, because people want what they want. They want to see what they're going to see. But at the end of the day, I feel like I can still be true to myself and never lose that, and continue to be that voice for the voiceless and uplift others. I mean, everyone deserves a little something. Like, I don't want to be just up there by myself. I got to bring everyone else along. Yeah.
But particularly Black women.
Yeah.
Black women have been a force when it You know, when it comes to the WNBA, you know, this is essentially an organization that was built on the backs of Black women. And so I, as a spectator and as a fan of Asia, I would love to see more Black women get the deals and get those sponsorship dollars that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to get to next, is the idea that look at all this progress, the arc of history is bending towards all of the things that, you know, I guess you guys never even had the, you know, the audacity, as it were, to keep on inadvertently quoting Obama, to dream, right? The idea that, look, at the end of this rainbow, all this stuff is there. And yet, what should people know about how much farther there is to go when it comes to how the characters that are being sold to consumers are in fact being framed, and at what costs, so to speak, are they being sold?
Yeah, it's a big moment where I just try to continue to say, like, if you could see her, you could be her. I want to be in spaces, and I hope that people can trust in Black women and understand that we have a lot more to give, but at the same time, you got to look and see how far we've come and know that there's so much work that needs to be done. But I'm not going to dim my light. I'm not going to soften my voice. I'm going to still be the person that I am every single day, because I know that there's a young Black girl that is like, well, where am I? Where am I? Why can't I be seen? And so whenever I come to the table, when it comes to big sponsorships or people that are like, well, we want to invest in you, I'm like, well, you're going to get me. And I'm not changing that, because that's what needs to be seen. And it's hard. It really is hard in a world that tries to tear you down, a world that tries to wipe you underneath that rug. But I feel like that's when you have to beam the brightest, is when you're in these rooms with different people pushing each other up to the top, and know, like, it's going to take all of us to get this change. It's not just us. It's going to be everyone in this room that's going to have to come together to help uplift others.
One last note is just how it used to be that activism was in tension with business, of course. The WNBA is one of the most political leagues that has ever existed. Helped topple a Senate race. You can look that one up if you don't know the story. It's great. But Ibtihaj, just the way in which you've realized, wait a minute, there's a niche here to be outspoken that could also be a path towards the things that, look, you're from New Jersey. The things that, as somebody who grew up knowing what Americans did and did not want, supposedly, oh, wait a minute, this is actually, there's commerce as well as principle here. How do you manage just that inherent tension?
Muhammad Ali has always been, you know, at the epicenter of the way that I view my platform, the way that I view I would say my life as an athlete. And so I owe it to the communities that I feel very much so a part of, and the world that I want to see change for the better. I feel like I owe it to all of us to use my voice and to find my voice, because for us as Black women, our skin has always been highly politicized, and us showing up, that's a form of resistance. And I feel like I have to embrace that, and I have to walk in my truth every day, whether it be as an athlete, as an activist, as an author, whatever it is. I feel like I have to show up in that space.
2 best-selling authors, by the way, just in case the resumes weren't long enough. The clock says 0, so
we gotta go.
Done.
Yeah.
Asia has a flight.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm supposed to exit left.
Ibtihaj, Asia, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.